In today's video, we're going to talk about how Dean Lonergan, promoter to Justis Huni, insulted Huni's rival Joe Goodall after the pair's fight because of his performance in the heavyweight blockbuster. We're also going to look at how Lonergan fired back at influential promoter Eddie Hearn after Huni secured a win. For all of this and a whole lot more, stay tuned. First up, Dean Lonergan rips Joe Goodall a new one. Dean Lonergan did not hold back when it came to sharing how he truly felt about Australasia heavyweight champion Joseph Goodall's abysmal performance against his client Justis Huni. In fact, the promoter went as far as to label the man's performance as disgusting. Gloating about his guy, Lonergan expressed that Huni was clearly fighting for the WBC and for the IBF titles, while Goodall, whom he referred to as an effing idiot, was apparently seen fighting for the WWE title. Fret not, Lonergan explained what he meant by his comment. He continued with his statement by sharing that it definitely seemed as if Goodall had come with the mindset to wrestle. He found it disgusting that Goodall actually headbutted Huni. Who headbutts someone in a boxing match? As it turns out, Lonergan's pissed at Goodall for more reasons than one. He also seemed mad about the fact that Goodall had missed a really important and massive opportunity where the fighter could have set up a rivalry between him and Huni that people would have been excited to see for years to come. What he did instead was play dirty, making the fight as boring and bad as he possibly could. Yikes. He concluded his hate fest by saying that if Joe Goodall ever thinks about returning to have a rematch with his boy Huni, then he can go and love himself. Okay, he didn't use the word love, but y'all get it. Papa Dean is big mad. Up next, Justis Huni's talents prevail as he beats Joe Goodall. In the fight between Huni and Goodall held in Brisbane, Huni claimed a big, entertaining blockbuster win against his opponent. Despite Goodall being all up in his face throughout the fight, Huni's hand speed as well as epic boxing skills prevailed and were clearly too much for his opponent. The 23-year-old boxer, with this match, improved as a professional to 6 wins and 0 losses. During the fight, Huni proved to everyone who witnessed things go down that he was a class above Goodall, his former sparring partner, when he managed to secure a convincing decision, unanimous across the board, and won the 10-round fight. All of that despite the fact that Huni had not fought an entire year, and there were people who had been putting doubts in the fighter's mind by questioning his potential as well as his hitting power. Goodall's performance was nothing short of a slugfest apparently, but it put Huni on a realistic path towards what? You guessed it, a world title fight. Yes. On the other hand, Lonergan says that all hope for a potential rematch is lost in Goodall's camp. Next up, why is it that important that the fight took place in Brisbane? So, you know that the two boxers fought at Nissan Arena in Brisbane, but this piece of information is interesting because Huni comes from nearby Logan in Brisbane South, while Goodall actually trained at the River City Stretton Boxing Club for about 9 years. Over the years, two of the best heavyweights in Brisbane, as they're known, are plenty familiar with one another, as they've had many experiences sparring with one another over the years. According to Goodall, the two men have done hundreds of rounds, even though whatever happens at the gym stays at the gym, because he clearly won't be opening up his mouth to talk about details of his time training with Huni. Apparently, it is stuff he'd like to mention in the books that will be written on the two boxers once their careers are over. Goodall also expressed that he had a feeling ever since Huni turned pro that the two would one day be crossing paths, since there's no concept of second place in boxing. You're either the best or you're not, huh, Goodall? Well, you clearly aren't, or at least Lonergan doesn't see you as a potential anything, let alone a rival for his boxer Huni. If not Goodall though, who else will be Huni's potential future opponents? Turns out Dean Lonergan has a few names up his sleeve for his boy Justis to consider as opponents, even if Goodall failed to live up to Lonergan's expectations. Very openly and without being coy about it, Lonergan said that talents like Lucas Brown, Chris Terzievsky, or even Kiki Lutelli have it in them to become potential future opponents, and maybe even strike up a rivalry or two with Justis Huni. In his books, Goodall is as good as done. Come on, did you really think we were going to pass up an opportunity to make a pun out of it? Up next, Dean Lonergan fires back at Eddie Hearn after Huni's win. When we say Lonergan is mad, we really mean it. He also took a very thinly veiled, arguably cheap shot at the guy everyone knows as the biggest promoter the world has ever known, Eddie Hearn. Apparently, all Hearn had to do to activate the wrath of the Kiwi promoter was to tip Goodall prior to his fight against Huni. So you may or may not know this, but Hearn promotes heavyweight champion from Queensland, Dempsey McKean, who has a record of 21-0 and has had 13 knockouts in his career. Lonergan went after McKean to make sure he attacked where it would hurt Hearn the most. He said that Huni's camp would gladly welcome a fight against Dempsey McKean, the heavyweight who has never lost one fight. He then also went on to say that even though Lonergan would love to meet up with McKean, he knows that Eddie Hearn would rather this didn't happen. He said that they will run like, well, little B-words instead of ever daring to fight against Justis Huni. Do not even talk to me about Dempsey McKean, he said. We all long to be this confident in life. One thing's for sure, Lonergan has a lot of faith in Huni's skills. Speaking of Huni's recent performance against Goodall, Lonergan expressed that Hearn must be sitting there wondering if it would be safe for him to send his biggest heavyweight to fight against Huni, concluding that the fighter has no chance whatsoever. Just as it seemed like Lonergan was going to cut McKean some slack by talking about how he's actually a talented guy, he proved us wrong by saying that McKean has done very well fighting other men who can't actually fight. Oof. Imagine the humiliation for the other guys, because it gets even worse for them. He called those men rubbish and said that they come off their route, put on some boxing gear, and then end up getting knocked out by, get this, somebody who can't fight. Dean, slow down, man. Slow down. Or don't. He even stated that it is evident that McKean can't fight if you were to simply look at him while he trains. For the final blow, Lonergan called McKean easy pickings for Honey because he's just sitting at number 10 in the world. Lonergan is awfully convinced that he and his boxer would take McKean for all that he's got in a heartbeat, but that he would never have the guts to stand up against Honey. Now, do these sound like the bells of a new rivalry brewing to you, or are we mistaken? And now, in some other related news. First up, Justis Huni talks about possibly fighting McKean next. In the same interview where Lonergan ripped Eddie Hearn's boy Dempsey McKean apart, Justis Huni shared that he believes McKean doesn't actually want to fight. He expressed that he's alright with the fact that the boxer doesn't want to fight him and that he's simply going to plug away, for his time will come. Mature approach there, Honey. The boxer is certainly different from his promoter in the way he approaches matters, as he says that he doesn't believe in talking smack. Instead, he simply lets his actions show what he's all about, and we've all witnessed how true that is. On the other hand, Eddie Hearn talks about Canelo putting himself in danger against GGG. Hearn gave his 2 cents recently about the fight that's going to take place between Canelo and Golovkin in September, marking as the 3rd fight in the trilogy of their showdowns. Hearn appears to be concerned that if Canelo lets his personal anger and tension get in the way, he is actually going to be very dangerous for him, and we know what he means by that. Letting your emotions in the way while fighting a bigger and stronger opponent can end very badly if Canelo doesn't play this carefully. And finally, Alexander Usyk warns that he will be different in the fight against Anthony Joshua. Since Joshua expressed that he's hungry and desperate and training harder than ever before for his next fight with Usyk, the latter actually responded that he is also going to be different. Usyk shared that he won't be fighting for money or recognition. He apparently doesn't want to be great, just wants to keep doing a good job while his heart's still beating. Damn, we love a dedicated man.